Story 1. Disclaimer: this story is not meant to belittle single mothers nor people with mental illness, and yes, I do love my mom, but this was a story about how things can come back to bite you. So just some backstory here. My parents divorced when I was just in kindergarten, so no more than 6. My mom got full custody of us, and she suffered from mental illness. I believe she has borderline personality disorder, and she was also a typical narcissistic parent. Anyway, ever since the divorce, she would always tell us how it was not her fault. We didn't have enough money for things and blame my dad. Example, if there was nothing to eat for breakfast, and we complained like small children do when they were hungry, she snapped, "It's your father's fault, so cry to him." I just learned never to complain and do without, and spent my childhood taking care of her. My sister and I were trained from when I was about 8, my sister 10, to come right home from school and do our homework and clean the house and take care of ourselves. Don't ask mom to make dinner, make it yourself, and all of the chores so mom doesn't have to do anything. It sounds bizarre, but we thought that was normal. It got worse my senior year of high school. My grandma died a few months before that summer, and my mom quit her job and blew through the money my grandma left her before the summer was over. This was close to $75K back in 2000. She refused to get another job and kept coming up with excuses not to work. That is, I need a break. Get off my back. I hurt my leg, etc., while she was going out drinking with her friend and acting like a carefree teenager. So I spent my senior year working hard at school, at my part-time job after school, and pretty much taking care of an overgrown child who refused to work or help out. Anytime a utility shut off or there was no food left in the house, she just griped, "You have a job. Why can't you pay it?" If I brought up the fact that my dad sent her child support, she would just complain that she had my sister's tuition, which I later learned it was basically crap. She would flaunt that child support check and laugh and refer to it as mommy's paycheck. Flash forward to when I am about to choose a college and my mom keeps bellyaching about the costs and of course has zero saved in a college fund. I couldn't afford a private university since I only was offered a partial scholarship, so I decided to go to a reasonably priced and still highly regarded state university. My freshman year, I was pretty much able to swing the cost of tuition and room and board. I lived on campus. Since last year of high school, I filed my taxes and FAFSA, free application for federal student aid, as soon as my wage and tax statement came in, so I had a decent amount of grants. During my first year of college, I almost became unable to receive financial aid for my second year of college. Why? My wage and tax statement were mailed to my home address, and my mom, being the caring and supportive mother she was, shredded them and threw them in the trash. I found out because my sister was home that weekend and saw it. My mom denied, and when I came home for spring break and pressed her for it, she lied and said her friend had them. Her friend was a certified public accountant. My sister called my mom out on this bluff by calling the friend who said she did not have any of our tax information. She was very concerned and told me and my sister to request duplicate wage and tax statements and have them sent home, and she will have my mom send them over to me. My mom was pissed that we had checked with her friend and called her out on her bluff, but true to her word, her friend did my taxes for me and my FAFSA. I had offered to pay her or at least babysit for her, but she told me it was okay. I think she knew my mom was mentally unstable and felt sorry for me and my sister. At this point, I learned that my mom had not been helping out my sister at all with tuition like she claimed, and my sister had mentioned it to my dad, who had called her out and demanded to know where the child support was going to. My mom insisted he wasn't paying her enough dollar, and that's why she couldn't help us out. During my second year of college, my wage and tax statement were once again sent home, and my mom once again accidentally threw them in trash. I had to request duplicate wage and tax statements from my summer job, not just once but twice, because she kept throwing them in the trash. I filed my tax return late that year, and as a result my FAFSA was filed late, so I wasn't able to get the full amount I was receiving before. Anytime I complained to her about money or no food in the house, it was, "Complain to your father." Well, the summer before my 3rd year, I was burned out on my mom's crap. I was working full-time for the summer and saving as much as I could, but she was refusing to help me out at all while I was home with food or anything. She was pissed that instead of paying the phone bill so she could make long-distance calls to her online friends and spend all day in chat rooms, this was back when we had dial-up. I had the audacity to spend my hard-earned money on a cell phone and pay that bill myself. She told everyone I should just drop out because I wasn't applying myself hard enough. I was in the honors program, and she would play martyr with all her friends about it's so hard when you have kids in college, and they eat your out of house and home and come to you for money. At the end of the summer I had saved $1,000, but the school won't let me move into the dorm, unless I paid 50% up front, which I was about $10K. I didn't know what to do as all summer the university had told me I was fine, and then on move-in day told me I couldn't move into the dorm. I called my dad in a panic, and he spoke to someone who agreed to give me 24 hours. I moved in, and the next day my dad showed up first thing with a coffee and a donut for me and told me not to worry. He was going to fix this once and for all. We went from office to office on campus, and he co-signed a loan, which he later paid off for me, and then he paid the balance on my tuition for the loan didn't cover. He then took me out to lunch and told me the truth. My mom never helped my sister with her tuition. My sister had graduated the summer before my junior year of college. My sister later confirmed this, but was not surprised my mom had lied. My dad had a co-signed loan to help my sister out, which he later paid off for her too, and my sister was able to get a scholarship and do COOP to pay for her last 2 years. He also advised me that my mom was not so poorly off. As part of the divorce settlement, he had to pay the mortgage and property taxes on our house, and even though my sister was now out on her own, he was still paying her the same amount of child support of about $2K a month despite the fact that I was living on campus for 75% of the year, and my mom was not giving me a dime. Just to give you some clarification, my tuition and room and board before financial aid kicked in was $15K a year, so she could have easily helped me out with school since after financial aid kicked in, when I was able to get it, the balance was usually $6K. I was hurt to think my mom was just living off my child support and constantly making me feel guilty for wanting anything or for not being able to cater to her every whim. She would get pissed that I wouldn't come home on the weekends to help her clean the house that I was not living in. I thought about how bad she made me feel growing up and made me feel worthless, when in fact, had it not been for me or my sister, she would have not had a roof over her head after the divorce. He asks me to grant him access to my account, so he could prove my mom was not paying for college, and that I was. He asked me how I would feel if he took care of college instead of paying my mom child support. Sounded good to me. He even told me I could spend my breaks at his house instead of my mom's. I called my mom and told her that my dad had taken care of the issue, and she had no remorse. She told me it was my own fault for not planning my finances better and for pissing away my money all summer. I just played it dumb and said she was right, but pointed out I had done what she told me to do and complained to my dad. A month later, my mom called me up pissed. My dad had spoken with the courts and there was going to be a hearing in their divorce case. My dad had proven that my mom had not been paying for mine nor my sister's tuition for college, and that was the very reason my dad was obligated to pay child support till I was done college. Since I was living on campus, it didn't make sense to pay her child support when I was not living at home most of the year and she was giving me 1 penny. My dad told the judge he would gladly pay for me to finish college, but he was not going to pay my mom any more child support or pay the mortgage on the house. If my mom didn't want to take over the mortgage, they could sell the house and I could live with him over my breaks. My mom was freaking out over this and calling me selfish. I just reminded her that my tuition must cost a lot more than what she got in child support since she was never able to help me with the costs of school. She just kept laying guilt trips on me about how I was selfish because she didn't get to go to college right after high school and how she never got to have 4 carefree years of college. I pointed out to her that she had not worked since my grandma died about 3 years ago and that I was working and going to school at that time, while she got to live a carefree life. She pretty much ripped me a new one at that point. She tried to get back at my dad by not paying utilities on the house to make it seem like she needed the money. She then told me that the electric and water were now shut off, so if I wanted to come home for winter break, I needed to help her out. She had moved in with her boyfriend at his condo. I just told her that I would miss her, but that I would just go to my dad's for winter break. She was pissed and cried about how selfish I was for not wanting to come home for Christmas. Side note: the Christmas before my present was throwing out many of my personal belongings. Why? My mom was pissed off at me that I didn't want to come home one weekend to help her clean, because to get home I had to take 2 buses, 2 trains, spend $21 one way, and wait for her to hopefully remember to pick me up at the train station, which was a whole 20-minute drive for her after I had traveled for 4 to 5 hours because I had finals, and I told her I would help clean for the holidays once I came home for winter break. Her response? She took all of my things, threw them in boxes, and threw them out on the front lawn. Most of my things were destroyed by being left in the rain, and I being away most of them. I told my mom that I would come and visit her over my winter break once she got the utilities turned on. I told my dad what was going on, and he said he and my stepmom and my half-brother and sister were thrilled I was going to stay with them for winter break, and he can get me a job in his office as well for winter break. He also called my mom and reminded her that the child support had not stopped, and they were going to list the house in a few months, so what was this nonsense about the utilities being shut off? She was pissed, but magically came up with the money to turn them back on. That spring my dad, officially by the court, took over my college tuition, and he even made sure I got my full financial aid since he had picked up the wage and tax statement for me. My mom lost her child support and was told by the judge that she better cooperate with the sale of the house and keep up with the utility bills, etc., so it would sell. Her boyfriend moved in with her till the house sold, and she moved to another time zone. The real kicker? It was cheaper for my dad to pay college costs than to pay her child support. No regrets. Edit. Some have asked how she treated us growing up. She wasn't 100% bad, but her bad moments were pretty bad. Granted, I have met a lot of people who have had it worse, so I try to remember that. I at least had my father and my sister, and that going through something like that has taught me to be strong and to rely on myself. Story 2. My story starts on a Tuesday afternoon. I was off duty, just trying to pick up a birthday gift for my niece. Little did I know I was about to run into the most entitled person I've ever met. First, let me give you a bit of background about myself. I wasn't always a cop. I used to work in an office, pushing papers and staring at a computer screen all day. It was mind-numbing work, and I felt like I wasn't making any real difference in the world. Then, one day, I witnessed a mugging on my way home from work. I tried to help, but I felt so helpless and unprepared. That's when I decided to change my career and become a police officer. Fast forward a few years, and there I was, an off-duty cop in a video game store, trying to buy the last copy of my niece's favorite game for her birthday. I had promised her I'd get it, and I was determined to keep that promise. I finally found the last copy on the shelf and was heading to the checkout when I heard a shrill voice behind me. "Karen, excuse me, that's the game my son wants." I turned around to see a woman with a kid who looked about 10 years old. She had that classic, "I want to speak to the manager" haircut, and her face was already turning red. Me, I'm sorry, but I grabbed it first. It's for my niece's birthday. Karen, well, my son wants it more. He's been waiting for this game for months. Me, I understand, but I got to it first. Maybe you can check another store or order it online. Karen, no, we want this one, now. You're an adult, you don't need video games. Give it to my son. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to stay calm and explain again. Me, Mom, am buying this for my niece, not myself. I'm not going to give it to you just because you're demanding it. Karen, do you know who I am? My husband is friends with the store owner. He'll have you banned from here. Me, that doesn't change anything. I still got to the game first, and I'm going to buy it." At this point, her kid started whining and tugging on her arm. "Kid, Mom, I want the game. Make him give it to me." "Karen, don't worry, sweetie. This mean man is going to give us the game right now." She turned back to me with a nasty look. "Karen, listen here, you selfish jerk. Give us the game now, or y'all regret it." "Me, Mom, I'm not going to tell you again. The game is mine. Please leave me alone or I'll have to call security." That's when things really went off the rails. Without warning, she kicked me right in the groin. I doubled over in pain, and in that moment, her kid snatched the game out of my hand. "Karen, run, sweetie. Go to the car." Through the haze of pain, I saw them making a break for it. They were actually trying to steal the game. Despite the throbbing pain, my police instincts kicked in. I couldn't let them get away with this. I struggled to my feet and started after them. The kid was fast, but the woman, who was a bit on the heavier side, was slowing down as she tried to keep up with her son. I managed to catch up to her in the snack aisle. "Me, stop right there. Karen, help. This man is attacking me." I could hear security guards running towards us. I tackled her to the ground, trying to keep her from escaping. "Me, am a police officer. This woman assaulted me and tried to steal merchandise." The security guards arrived, looking confused at the scene before them. "Security guard, what's going on here?" "Me, am an off-duty police officer. This woman kicked me and had her son steal a game I was about to purchase. They tried to run out of the store without paying." I showed them my badge while still keeping the woman pinned down. One of the guards went after the kid while I put handcuffs on the woman. "Karen, you can't do this to me. I know my rights." "Me, Mom, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." I called for backup, and soon on-duty officers arrived to take her to the station. The security guards had managed to catch her son and recover the game. As the officers were taking her away, she was still yelling and making threats. "Karen, I'll sue all of you. My husband is a lawyer." "Me, Mom, you assaulted a police officer and attempted to steal merchandise. Your husband being a lawyer isn't going to help you here." After giving my statement to the responding officers, I was finally able to buy the game for my niece. Talk about a birthday gift with a story behind it. Later, I found out about the charges pressed against the woman. She was charged with assault on a peace officer, attempted shoplifting, and other charges. Her son was released to his father's custody, and Child Protective Services got involved to investigate the home situation. The woman ended up pleading guilty to avoid a trial. She got community service, a fine, and mandatory anger management classes. Last I heard, she was banned from the store for life. You know, in all my years on the force, I've dealt with a lot of entitled people, but this one really took the cake. It just goes to show, you never know when your police training might come in handy, even on your day off. And let me tell you, my niece was thrilled with her birthday gift. She couldn't stop laughing when I told her the story of how I got it for her. It's definitely a birthday she'll never forget. Story 3. I never thought I'd have to deal with someone as entitled as my neighbor, Tom, in my quiet suburban neighborhood. It all started a few months ago when Tom moved in next door. He was a firefighter, and at first I thought that was pretty cool. Little did I know that his profession would soon become his excuse for some outrageous behavior. One sunny afternoon, I was returning home from work when I noticed a familiar sight. Tom's shiny red pickup truck was parked right in the fire zone in front of our building, right next to the "No Parking Fire Zone" sign. This wasn't the first time he had done this, and it was becoming increasingly frustrating. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and went over to talk to him. After all, I thought, maybe there was a legitimate reason he parked there. I knocked on his door, and he answered with a smug grin on his face. "Hey, Tom," I began, trying to sound friendly. "I noticed your truck is parked in the fire zone again. You know we're not supposed to park there, right?" Tom chuckled as if my concern was utterly absurd. "Oh, don't worry about it," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "I'm a firefighter, so I can park wherever I want. It's my privilege. I was taken aback by his arrogance. I get that you're a firefighter, but that doesn't mean you can just ignore parking rules. What if there's a real emergency and the fire department can't access the building because your truck is in the way? Tom's smirk only grew wider. Relax, buddy. I've got a scanner in my truck. If there's an emergency, I'll move it. Besides, I pay rent here too, you know. I couldn't believe his audacity. Paying rent doesn't give you the right to break the law, I said firmly. Please, just follow the parking rules like everyone else. Tom shrugged and closed the door, leaving me standing there frustrated. It was clear that he wasn't going to change his behavior voluntarily. I decided to take a different approach and contacted the building manager, Mr. Jenkins, to report the ongoing issue. A few days later, Mr. Jenkins sent out a notice to all residents reminding them of the parking rules and explicitly stating that no one, regardless of their profession, was allowed to park in the fire zone. I hoped this would put an end to Tom's entitled behavior, but I was in for a surprise. The very next evening, as I was watching TV in my living room, I heard a loud argument outside. Curious, I peeked through my window blinds and saw Tom and Mr. Jenkins engaged in a heated exchange. "You can't tell me where to park," Tom shouted at our building manager. Mr. Jenkins remained calm but resolute. "I'm sorry, Tom, but the rules apply to everyone. Parking in the fire zone is a safety hazard, and we can't make exceptions." Tom's face turned bright red as he continued to argue. "I've been a firefighter for over 10 years, and this is how you treat me. I risk my life every day, and this is the thanks I get?" I couldn't help but cringe at Tom's dramatic display. I knew that being a firefighter was a demanding job, but it didn't excuse his entitled behavior. The argument escalated to the point where Mr. Jenkins threatened to call the police if Tom didn't move his truck immediately. Tom reluctantly agreed and stormed off to relocate his truck. It seemed like we had made some progress, but I had a feeling this wouldn't be the end of it. A few weeks passed, and Tom's truck was nowhere to be seen in the fire zone. I hoped that he had finally come to his senses and decided to follow the rules like the rest of us. However, my hopes were short-lived. One Saturday morning, I was awoken by the blaring sound of a horn outside my window. I rushed to see what was going on, and to my astonishment, there was Tom, parked once again in the fire zone, blocking the entrance to our building. I couldn't believe he was at it again. I decided to call the non-emergency police line to report the ongoing issue. Within minutes, a police officer arrived at our building. I went outside to meet the officer, who introduced himself as Officer Johnson. I explained the situation to him and pointed out Tom's truck. "Sir, I'll have to ticket this vehicle for parking in a fire zone. It's a safety violation, and no one is above the law," Officer Johnson said. I nodded in agreement, relieved that someone was finally taking action. Officer Johnson proceeded to write a ticket and affixed it to Tom's windshield. Just then, Tom emerged from his apartment, clearly agitated by the presence of the police officer. He stormed over to us, shouting, "What do you think you're doing? I'm a firefighter. I can park here." Officer Johnson remained calm and professional. "I understand that you're a firefighter, sir, but that doesn't exempt you from following parking regulations. Blocking the fire zone is a safety concern." Tom was furious. "This is ridiculous. You're harassing me because of my profession." Officer Johnson shook his head. "I'm just doing my job, sir. If you have an issue with the ticket, you can contest it in court." Tom's face turned a deeper shade of red, and he continued to argue with Officer Johnson. It was clear that he wasn't going to back down easily. I decided to stay out of the confrontation and let the officer handle the situation. As the argument between Tom and Officer Johnson escalated, a small crowd of neighbors began to gather, curious about the commotion. Tom's outburst was drawing even more attention to his entitled behavior. Finally, Officer Johnson had enough. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down. If you continue to be disruptive, I'll have no choice but to place you under arrest." Tom scoffed. believing he could intimidate the officer with his firefighter status. "You wouldn't dare." But Officer Johnson remained resolute. "I will if I have to." Tom's face twisted in anger, but he begrudgingly backed down and retreated into his apartment. Officer Johnson warned him not to interfere further and then turned to me. "I appreciate your cooperation, sir. I'll be sure to file a report about this incident, and if there are any more violations, we'll take appropriate action." I thanked Officer Johnson for his assistance and watched as he left our building. It was clear that Tom's sense of entitlement had finally caught up with him. I hoped that this would be a wake-up call for him and that he would start respecting the rules like the rest of us. However, my optimism was short-lived. A few days later, I received a knock on my door. It was Officer Johnson, accompanied by another police officer. "We received a report of a disturbance involving your neighbor, Tom," Officer Johnson explained. "He became aggressive and threatened us when we tried to issue another ticket for parking in the fire zone." I was shocked to hear that Tom had escalated the situation further. "I'm really sorry about all this, officer. I had no idea he would react like that." Officer Johnson nodded sympathetically. "We understand, but we can't tolerate threats or aggression toward law enforcement. We'll need you to provide a statement about what you witnessed." I agreed to cooperate and gave a detailed account of Tom's behavior during both incidents. It was clear that Tom's entitlement had spiraled out of control, and it was now a matter for the police to handle. As I finished my statement, Officer Johnson thanked me for my cooperation and assured me that they would handle the situation appropriately. They left to address the issue with Tom, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that something was finally being done. A few hours later, I received a call from another neighbor, Lisa, who lived in the apartment across the hall from Tom. She informed me that the police had arrested Tom and were in the process of towing his truck. I went outside to see the commotion. Tom was in handcuffs, shouting obscenities at the officers as they loaded his truck onto a tow truck. Lisa and I exchanged glances, both of us relieved that Tom's entitled behavior was finally being addressed. It was clear that being a firefighter didn't grant him special privileges when it came to breaking the law. Over the next few weeks, our neighborhood returned to its peaceful state. Tom was no longer our neighbor, and the fire zone in front of our building remained clear of unauthorized vehicles. Story 4. Where I work, many of my coworkers have visible tattoos, and it has never been an issue. Even some of the assistant managers and higher-ups have tattoos that can be seen while wearing their uniforms. For some context, during the summer months, we are allowed to wear shorts if we choose to. I get very warm during the summer and do not handle the heat well, so I opt to wear shorts almost every day from May through August. I have a tattoo of a mermaid on the side of my lower leg. It is a typical American traditional-style mermaid, and she has a bare upper body. The mermaid's chest is depicted with a simple black dot, small and minimal. It is not exaggerated or drawn in an inappropriate style. Additionally, it is positioned on the side of my lower leg and is surrounded by many other tattoos, so it does not particularly stand out. For several weeks, there were no issues with the tattoo. One of my managers even commented on my leg tattoos, saying he liked the artistic style. However, one day, an assistant manager approached me and suddenly claimed that my tattoo was inappropriate and unprofessional for the workplace. She demanded that I either wear pants or completely cover the mermaid's chest every day. I asked her if a customer had complained or if our manager had said anything. She told me no, she was the only one who found it offensive, and she insisted that I cover it. I asked several coworkers for their opinions, and they all thought she was overreacting. This particular manager had a history of pushing her opinions on others and getting her way. Even other assistant managers had conflicts with her in the past. Still, I decided that if I had to cover the mermaid's chest, I might as well do it in a way that felt creative. I went to several craft stores to find as many seashell and ocean-themed stickers as I could. I also bought small gemstone stickers and some thread. Using the gemstones and thread, I made tiny decorative tassels for the mermaid's chest. They turned out adorable and quickly became a conversation starter. Both coworkers and customers commented on how creative and fun they looked. When the assistant manager who had demanded I cover the tattoo saw my solution, she was not happy. She had expected me to use bandages or something plain to cover it up. However, I got her to admit that I was technically following her request. The mermaid's chest was no longer visible. The longer I had to keep the tattoo covered, the more creative I became. I used all sorts of fun, flashy stickers and designs. At one point, I even used googly eyes. My coworkers loved it, and most of them agreed that the requirement to cover the tattoo was unnecessary in the first place. Eventually, that assistant manager was fired. Once she was gone, I stopped covering the mermaid tattoo. Since then, I have not had any issues with other managers regarding it. I suppose the matter is settled, and at least I gotta have some fun while it lasted. Story 5. So I've lived with a horrible roommate who hates my guts for over a year now. Usually I just stay in my room to avoid her because there's not a confrontational bone in my body, but she still finds nice little ways to make life miserable. Well, call her N. N has always enjoyed fun roommate activities like not doing dishes for months at a time. I was blamed for every dish, so I switched to disposable plates. Haven't used actual cutlery in months, so it's all her. Smoking weed in the house almost every day. Never paying bills on time, then getting mad at us for pestering her about them, and getting mad at pretty much anything else we do. Now for a little backstory. N has 2 huge German shepherds who are loud, aggressive, and stay in the backyard almost every night while she's out partying. Our neighbors have a young kid who is woken up by the loud barking, so we've had the cops called on us 4 times already for noise complaints from. I also have a dog border collie, but she stays in my room for most of the day because I'm only ever gone for a few hours at a time. The last time the cops were called I was home and the officer let it go with a warning, but said next time there will be a ticket. Fast forward 2 months. N is dog sitting for a friend. We now have 5 big dogs in our tiny house, and these dogs are even more barky, which only riles up her too even more. She's left them outside for the past 2 nights when she goes to bed, and they sit outside my window howling their butts off until 3 a.m., until I finally let them in out of fear for a ticket. Finally, I've had enough, so I let the dogs in again and politely ask they be kept inside overnight because we're going to get a ticket, and she loses it. She fires back a 2-paragraph text about how it's somehow my fault, that my dog barks 24 hours a day anyway, not true, that I need to immediately let them back outside, and she isn't worried about cops. Ha, okay. Like any good roommate would, I release the hellhounds into the backyard, and they immediately go crazy. Then I grab my purse and book it out if they're to stay with a friend for the night. Came back the next day and surprise. The neighbors called the cops and N received a beautiful $350 ticket. She's pissed. It feels so good. I hope she moves out.